On Saturday, May 9th, Fairfax County Public Schools will host its second annual Community Conversation on Teen Stress. It will be held at Hayfield Secondary School from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The free event will provide information and strategies for students, parents, community members, and educators to help foster wellness and resiliency in teens. Today we have several guests in the studio who will share their perspectives on teen stress. Dane Charneko, school psychologist at Madison High School. Leslie Roberts, prevention specialist supervisor for Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board. Wilma Bowers, a past PTSA president at McLean High School and a parent leader. And also Jack Holland, a senior at McLean High School. Welcome everybody.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you could join us. This is such an important conversation to have. Dane, why don't we start with you? As a school psychologist, you're really on the ground. You're seeing kids every day that are dealing with different levels of stress. What would you say are some of the most common stressors that you're seeing?
Well, I think that teens today face a really wide variety of stressors. I think, as my colleague, our social worker Kelly Stock at Madison always says, there's a big stressor for teens to go above and beyond, and she terms it super teen, being a super teen, trying to be the best at everything. There's a lot of stressors, academic stressors. I think a lot of students are really heavily invested in achieving excellent grades. They are also heavily invested in challenging themselves academically, to the extent that a large portion of our student body has courses made up almost exclusively of advanced placement courses and/or honors courses, and also to get into an excellent college. I think there's a lot of social pressure, including pressure in social media, to keep up with all that. There's athletic pressure, family stressors. There's a whole variety.
Okay. And since you mentioned social media, I definitely want to touch on that. How do you feel social media and technology have really impacted the stress levels of teens?
Well, I think that social media can be a really positive thing when used in moderation. I think that it can also lead to a lot of stress, because our students are so busy all the time, and I think that there's also a great desire, as well as from waking up real early to taking all the difficult courses, then to doing their extracurricular activities, and all the while trying to keep up with everything on social media, then coming home and having it in their hand on the way home. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And I think that there's a lot of times with social media, since it's not a direct one-on-one interaction, there's sometimes things are said that are less sensitive than they ordinarily would have been if someone you're making direct contact with someone. And so people are a little bit loose at times with what their comments are, and those comments can be very hurtful. The other thing is that when you're reading things on social media, you don't have the context of someone's facial expression or their tone of their voice, so sometimes things are maybe taken more personally than they're intended.
Okay. And actually, Jack, since you are a student, a teen who's active in social media, what's your perspective on that?
I certainly agree with everything that's been said. I think that the biggest thing about social media is that it just takes away some of this valuable time that we have. And I think a lot of students really see it as almost a recess or a break from doing all these activities and these hard work. And we want to be involved in our friends' lives and know what's going on with them. And I think that social media is a great way to do that and a great way to bring people closer together. But I think it also can take up a lot of this time that we obviously know is so valuable for students.
And speaking of time commitments, you are a member of the National Honor Society. You've been involved in mentoring programs, varsity sports, and plenty of other activities. How are you finding balance with all those commitments, plus your social life and schoolwork, and responsibilities at home? How are you managing all that?
It's very hard, and it's a problem that I think almost every high schooler faces and learns to deal with and adapt to. Really, I think it comes down to just being able to manage your time effectively and know that not everything's going to happen sometimes, and being able to prioritize what you will be able to meet and what you won't be able to achieve. But it's been great for me personally. I've had coaches, teachers, leaders who have been very receptive towards my missing some things and being able to be involved in all the activities that I have been able to be a part of, which I think these activities is very stressful and very challenging to be able to be good at and meet all of them and be able to go to all of them. But I think it's a testament to really all the opportunities that we're afforded as students, that our teachers are there to help us, are there to be able to guide us. And I think it's a great fact that we do have so many activities that it's hard to make all of them.
Absolutely. Now, Leslie, tell us about the Community Services Board. What's your connection with the second annual community conversation on teen stress?
We are the public agency that is really that safety net, that supportive system for the community, and we partner with Fairfax County Public School System. So what we go in and do with this Teen Summit is try to educate and inform as many people as possible about certain programs that we offer in the schools that are preventative programs to help kids that are struggling with stressful issues, are beginning to see some symptoms of early mental health onset. We have a Girls Circles program and we have a life skills program. We also work with a computer program that we've given to the school system and the community called Cognito. And we're going to promote that everyone would know that's a free program around suicide prevention, identification, signs and symptoms. And then we'll be promoting our mental health first aid initiative that the CSB is now trying to train as many people in the community, everybody, from hotel managers to barbers to community faith leaders to school system administrators, just everybody to know this is a sign and a symptom. And here's when I say, wow, should I tell somebody? Should I make somebody know something's going on here? So that's the CSB's role with our partnership with the school system, and that's what we'll be talking about at the summit.
Okay. And as the title of the event indicates, it's a community conversation.
Yes.
So why is the community's role so critical when we're having this discussion of fostering wellness and resiliency?
Well, we all live in a community. We all are the eyes and ears of sort of the health of our community. So the more individuals that know about what does a healthy young person look like, what does early onset mental health symptoms look like, what would make me go, this is a red flag, and to help break down that stigma and realize that the earlier we can intervene, the better the prognosis. We don't want to wait till at the end where there's such trauma and there's such problems happening, but those early signs, that's why we want the community involved, and also to raise the resiliency. Communities that really work together and offer healthy activities, those children really flourish in those communities.
Okay. So Wilma, you have been a leader in the McLean community in terms of bringing awareness to the academic pressure that parents put on their children. How did you start that conversation, or what prompted you to start that conversation?
Well, like most volunteer activities, it starts with your children. And when my oldest, who's now a sophomore in college, was in 3rd grade and was invited to go to the Gifted and Talented Center, it meant she would have had to have changed schools. And she didn't want to change schools. And the criticism that she received as a 3rd grader and the criticism that I received as a parent of a 3rd grader was astounding. Fast forward, when she was in 7th grade, she came home from school and started talking about how the lunchroom conversation was about what is a good college and what is a bad college, and whether you're a loser if you go to a bad college. Around that time, I, as a parent volunteer in the community, found the Fairfax County Youth Survey and was astounded that 30% of our high school students routinely felt hopeless on an annual basis, that close to 20% routinely considered suicide, that 5% actually attempted suicide, 20% of our seniors are binge drinking, and I hope this isn't the case for Jack, but the majority of our students sleep less than 6 hours a night, when the recommendation is 9. So with this information, I thought, more people need to know this data. More people need to know that we really are at a crisis point in the Fairfax County community, that our kids are telling us it's too much. And the parents have a role, the teachers and administrators have a role, and the students have a role.
Okay. And so you've done a lot of work on that mission, right? You've had events, you've had meetings, and you've also had lectures and workshops all about educating parents and getting them to understand that sometimes, you know, going for academics at all costs is just not worth it. How do you think you've done with that? In other words, has the needle moved at all?
Well, and again, I want to point out it's not just me. There are pockets of people who are passionate about this topic all across the county. So I'm just a representative of that group here today. I think that we've had some successes in the following area, and actually, in large part, I think Dr. Garza has really helped ratchet up the conversation, and she's been very receptive to putting resources around teen stress and mental health awareness. School administrators are doing the same thing. For the first time in the last 2 years at McLean High School, I've heard our principal, Ellen Riley, and our Director of Student Services, Paul Stansberry, talk about how you cannot take 4 and 5 advanced placement classes, which are college classes, as a junior or senior in high school and have a happy life. It's impossible. So that's a success. I think we've also provided for those parents who are concerned about their community and their children, I think that we have given them a platform to feel that they're not alone. But if you think about, you know, it took us over 10 years to even change the school start time, and we've really only invested really concerted effort the last 3, maybe 4 years on this topic. I think we have a long way to go, but I think the tide is turning.
And Dane, I was going to get your opinion on that as well, because I know you obviously have interactions with parents. Do you feel that some of them are starting to chill out a little bit when it comes to pushing their kids?
Well, I think that it's always very, very stressful to know exactly what to do, because on the one hand, you know, there's the message is communicated, hey, we want you to have a balanced life. And then on the other hand, I'm sure Jack can relate to this, all these schools are really wanting to see students really push themselves to the fullest extent that they can. And it is really critical to balance. And I think that the message is starting to get out, though. I definitely sense that when I'm in my meetings with parents more and more, I think that they're really valuing the more balanced lifestyle versus the constantly pushing the envelope to the next level. I think, you know, rather than the focus on the student being the absolute best, they're looking at what's best for my student. What's best for my child.
So let's talk about resiliency a little bit more. That is one of the key themes of the upcoming Teen Stress Summit. What do you see as one of the key components to building resiliency in our children? Well,
there are a lot of important components to building resiliency, but without a doubt, the number one is a relationship with a charismatic adult. And that would be someone that I would describe as someone that youth, that student, can really relate to, that they build a really trusting, caring relationship, very positive, nurturing, supportive relationship. And that person could be a parent, it could be a relative, it could be a family friend, a coach, a teacher, a band director, someone from the church, but that is the essential factor. And it's not necessarily the amount of time, it's really the quality of time and the quality of the relationship that makes the difference.
Okay. And did you all want to weigh in on the resiliency piece
Well,
as
some of the protective factors from the youth survey is that children who regularly are involved in some activity that is pleasurable to them, and that have dinner with their families, raise that level of functioning at the potential they need to be versus going into some of the behaviors that we talked about.
And I also think that the concept of overparenting is something that fits in with this very well. I mean, I've certainly made my fair share of mistakes, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm the perfect parent. But when we don't let our children suffer the consequences of their actions or fail and learn how to bounce back, that too can create a lack of resiliency in our kids. If we want everything to be so perfect, we want them to be so perfect all the time, and we want things to be so perfect for them all the time, and that's just not real life.
I think that's very true. I think that there's so much pressure on these students, and so many of my personal friends are taking 4 or 5 AP classes, and they're also incredible athletes and great kids all around. There's so much pressure on them, but they've learned to deal with it because a lot of their parents are they're for a big benefit in their life. They'll push them and they'll help them exceed, and they'll help in any way, just like so many coaches, teachers, administrators at our schools are doing, but they're not pulling them. And I think that that's the biggest difference that I notice in parents of my friends and of my parents themselves. My parents are incredible. They've guided me, they've pushed me, they've helped me to get to where I am now. But they have never forced anything upon me, and I think that's the biggest difference on a lot of my friends is they have parents who made them apply to some schools when they didn't want to go and they knew they wouldn't go. And to me that was unfathomable, because if you're not going to go, there's no reason to put the effort in and apply. But I think that's the biggest difference of parents that push and guide and parents that pull, and it's something that we need to talk about and really raise awareness for, because it's not beneficial for the students at all.
Well, and I have a comment on that from Dr. Madeline Levine, who coined the phrase authentic success.
Good, because I was going to ask you about that.
So, she's done a lot of work in this area. She's also featured in the movie Race to Nowhere, which really accentuates this whole conversation.
That's one of the
in the
screenings
movie
that you held,
we
correct?
have done the Race to Nowhere. We've done the Race to Somewhere.
Okay.
And we have had a lot of community discussions about this with Dr. Brad Sachs, who came in last fall to the McLean Community Center, standing room only for both Dr. Sachs and Dr. Levine the year before. That she makes a couple of points, and one is when we're expecting our kids to be perfect, and Dane mentioned getting into very selective, prestigious universities. Well, the reality is, those universities want a large number of students to apply because it helps them from a marketing perspective, say we're a highly selective university. So parents and students and administrators and teachers have to realize that when we're pushing our kids to apply to highly selective universities, that only a small percentage of kids are going to get in. And if the notion is you're going to get into this highly selective university so that you can get a highly selective job, so that you can then be highly selective in terms of success, money, or however you define success, that to expect all of our children to achieve that is a false assumption. And to put that kind of pressure on our kids is not fair. So, Frank Bruni, reporter for the New York Times, has been on the speaker circuit recently. He's just written a book saying where you go to college does not determine your path. And he makes a lot of very valid points there. I was an executive for Verizon for 20 years, and what mattered most to me was not where someone went to college, but what they could do within the company, within the team. That was more important to me than where they got their college degree.
Despite the increasing awareness of mental illness, there is still a stigma attached to it, which is preventing a lot of our kids, a lot of people in general, from getting help. What would you suggest that we could do as a society to change that? Anybody?
Well, I think that a lot of it is reaching out to these people and telling them that there's nothing to be ashamed of, afraid of, or scared of. It's something that at McLean we've done a large program of teaching awareness and prevention, and one of the things that we've found is most helpful is guiding our students on where to get help, how to get help, because a lot of them don't know. We know it's a problem, and we can recognize these signs often, as they've touched so many of our friends and so many of my friends, but we don't know what to do about it. And so one of the things that we did is we introduced many of our students to our admins, our counselors, our school psychologists, and we were able to, within a couple of weeks, really learn a lot more about our students and get some of the students the help that they needed. And really, I think it broke down a lot of the stigma for the students at McLean, because we realized that so many of our students and our friends and our peers face these issues, and it's not something that they need to deal with alone. We made a conscious point that it's not our prerogative to fix the problem, but it is our obligation to make sure that that problem is known to the admins at the school. So that's something that McLean's been doing to try to break that stigma, that really to tell people they're not alone.
Yeah, I think that Fairfax County in general, and certainly Madison as well, there's just so much more openness in terms of talking about mental health issues, mental health awareness. Our school counseling department sets up a wellness week every year where there's a huge emphasis on learning wellness techniques, both for physical, mental, emotional wellness. We do a depression screening at high school and middle school levels across the county, where we can identify students that may be at risk and have some symptoms of depression. A lot of schools have mentoring programs, like at at McLean. It sounds like you all have a great mentoring program, and we do as well at Madison, where we go to Marshall Road Elementary School, and we have 63 students that go over there to mentor students that were identified either by family or their teachers as someone who could use a positive role model. And these students are celebrated. And just as a school psychologist, I have the opportunity to go into 9th grade health classes and teach the depression and suicide portion of the health class. And we really make a point also of making sure that the students as 9th graders know who the school psychologist is, who the school social worker is, how you access your school counselor when you need them. And what I've noticed is each and every week there are students that come to me out of the blue and saying, I'm really struggling with some particular issue. Or I'll have an email from a student, or a student bringing one of their friends. I'm really worried about my friend. So I think that the message is really getting out. And so I think that that's really exciting. And I think that can go a long way to breaking down the barriers that we have about talking about mental health.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm the community partner with you, where that's where we're at. We're out in the community where we are teaching with the mental health first aid program the signs and symptoms. And that's a fabulous conversation in these classes. It's an 8-hour class, but here's where we break the stigma down. Here's where we start really helping people understand this is what so many people experience. So how do we as a family, as a community, as a system help each other? And we really teach people, the statistics and research are going to show people are more often with a mental illness going to be a victim versus a violent offender. And there's that empathy that we're trying to create. What I really love is that we have open enrollment with the county, but people that take that class get other people to come and take that class. And I had a woman that took the class, and 3 years later she called me. She worked in a landscaping company and was really worried about one of the guys who hadn't shown up for work for 3 days. And she went through all the things I taught her in the class, and she said, I'm going to go to my boss. I think I know what to do. And I was like, yay, fantastic. So, it's social media, movies, how the mentally ill are portrayed. We're working on that. I think it's so much better. What you're doing in the schools, these summits, what we do. Even Michelle Obama is supporting mental health first aid, which is like, thank you, this is fantastic.
Well, and to say something exciting about the Youth Mental Health First Aid Program, we definitely have trainers within the school system, but also we were one of 2 places that piloted teaching the Youth Mental Health First Aid program to actual high school students, 16 and above. And they responded really well to it, and I think that that's something that you'll be seeing much more of in the future.
And I think this community awareness, from a student's perspective, so many of my friends have wrestled with depression, anxiety, stress, body images, and these are very real problems. And what's changed, I think, is that it's my friends that are dealing with it, and it's not some far away person. It's not someone I can't imagine. Exactly. It's very, it touches me and it touches my life through the lives of my friends, and that's made it very, very attainable to a very graspable concept to me.
But it really is both things. It's both the prevention and the awareness and treatment side, and that's why I think we need to tune into both. We do need to try to prevent some of the anxiety, depression, and stress that students are participating in or falling prey to through conversations about balance, life balance, taking the appropriate classes, applying to the schools where you really have a passion to go, as well as the treatment. It has to be both sides of the equation.
Great. Well, Dane, Leslie, Wilma, and Jack, thank you all so much for joining us. It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And again, we encourage all of you to join us on May 9th at the second annual Community Conversation on Teen Stress. For more information, please visit the website on your screen.